Welcome to another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. Grab your popcorn, grab your drink, grab your pills, and get ready. We'll be right back.
Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.
Last week, I gave you some credible information about the drone show. I did call the company myself, Sky Elements. I got their voice note. I left my contact information there. And sure enough, on Thursday evening, after recording, I got a call back from a gentleman, Mr. Eddie Fernandez, from Sky Elements. And he was very helpful. Indeed, he was. And so, without any frills, no frills. Last week I said, well, to be a little conservative, let's make it 175,000. Oh no, we're going to stick to 150,000 USD for the 500 drones and the drone show held here in Grenada last, just almost a year ago, February 7th, 2024. 150,000 US dollars. So I'm saying this to say that it is tobacco well pressed, and that the question needs to be asked. Where's that money that you all had us believing that it was $1 million plus? Because as I said, there were rumors of 1.3, 1.2, but 1.5, up to $1.5 million. And you guys said nothing. You were tight-lipped, as if to say, oh Lord, we can't let them know how much the drone show was. It was that expensive. Knowing it was even cheaper than the metalworks on the carronage. The metal poles that was taken down eventually, the eyesore, that started to rust and all of that. It was cheaper than that, right? Why? Why was it hidden? Was it in an effort to embezzle the balance? $400,500 less, right? The metalwork costed $503,070. So a balance of $1,099,500 floating around somewhere out there. All you could put whatever spin all you want on it. The question remains, why didn't the National Organizing Committee and the Secretariat give us the cost of the drone show? Why? Why was it hidden? The same time you gave us the amounts for the lights, which was $290,750. The metalworks, as I said, $503,070. The drone, well, we have the drone now. The fireworks was $20,300. The Secretariat salaries, $365,600. Let's add the drone to that. $400,500, and we get an amount of $1,580,220, right? That's what was accounted for. So we have an unaccounted amount of $20,919,780. Subtract that. When you subtract the $1,580,220 from $22.5 million, we now have an unaccounted amount of 20 million, $919,780. We await the Minister of Finance accountability on the 22.5 million allocated towards the Golden Jubilee celebrations. We're not going to let up. We're not going to let up. We need accountability. We are yet to hear a definite date for the reading of the budget. Section 19 of the Public Finance Management Act. And let me get that here. Right? Section 19. It reads, Parliament shall, and remember what shall means in law, legally, right? Remember, shall is compulsory. Remember that. So Parliament shall have the sole authority and responsibility to review and approve the proposed budget prior to the commencement of the fiscal year in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. According to Section 19, there is no provision to go beyond the fiscal year. So, the budget should be read at the end of the fiscal year for the new year. So, the 2024 budget should have been already read because the new fiscal year starts in January of 2024. Right? Not done, because we're reading from the Public Finance Management Act, okay? Now, according to Section 21 of the same Public Finance Management Act, and I'm reading this here to you. Let me get my glasses. And it says, where the Appropriation Act for a financial year has not come into operation at the commencement of the financial year for any reason, the minister is authorized to collect revenues and approve such expenditure, authorized to collect revenues and approve such expenditure necessary to 3 months from the beginning of that financial year or the coming into operation of the Appropriation Act, whichever is earlier, save and except that A, such expenditure shall not be totally exceeded 1/4 of the approved budget of the previous fiscal year, and B, in the case of the capital expenditures, only expenditures that in the previous financial year were contemplated to continue shall be authorized for such spending. Subsection 2. On the coming into force of the Appropriation Act, any provisional expenditures pursuant to subsection 1 shall be deemed to have been paid out for corresponding services in the estimates for each provision was made under the Appropriation Act and shall be accounted for accordingly. Now, what this section was saying here, Now, note what it didn't say. It did not say if there was no budget. What it's saying is if the act did not come out in time, not gazetted, in other words. If it was not gazetted on time, there are provisions for that. But not if the budget was not read on time. Now, section 17, subsection 1. Let's get that here. Clearly lay out the plan for the Minister of Finance, guiding him as to what should happen so the budget could be read on time. For the purpose of guiding covered entities in preparing their budget proposal, the minister may issue a budget circular to guide the budget process. Now, speaking to persons involved, and the minister, who's the now Minister of Finance, was involved in that before for years as well. Since June, from about June, this process should start. And subsection 2 says, a budget circular shall prescribe ceilings on expenditure broken down at the level of details of determined by the minister, given detailed policy instructions to be compiled with economic entities in course of the preparation of their budget. C, prescribe any other matters as may be deemed appropriate by the minister. So you have different entities that you have to deal with, the PSs. They're supposed to get their information in time and work in time so that the budget could be on time. Again, my friends, democracy is compromised. Our democracy. This administration is destroying information to the public. We are not in a lodge. We, the people, have to know how much monies was collected and how much was spent. It's not a secret. It should be public knowledge. What is the real reason for the late arrival of the 2025 estimates and expenditure, we ask? Are we broke? Did we have a busted 2024 budget? Are we missing funds? What is the reason? What is the real reason? Moving along. Travel update. In a press release dated January the 9th, 2025, Honorable Deacon Mitchell leads a delegation to China to commemorate the 20th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Grenada and China. The delegation, led by the Prime Minister, Honorable Deacon Mitchell, will embark on its significant visit from January the 9th to the 17th, 2025. On the 18th of January, 2025, Ministers Joseph Andel and Lennox Andrew, who accompanied the Prime Minister, part of the big delegation, to China, returned home. The Prime Minister, his Chief of Staff, Teddy St. Louis, his Executive Secretary, his Press Secretary, the Special Envoy, Ms. Andres St. Bernard, was a no-show. Then on January the 20th, 2025, another release. let me put this up here quickly. And the release said, January the 20th, 2025, following the official visit to the People's Republic of China, Prime Minister Honorable Deacon Mitchell participated in the Future of Citizen by Investment event at Wilton Park, London on January the 20th, 2025. So the China's visit to China ended on the 17th, right, of January. They're telling us here what is happening from the 20th of January. So we have a few days to play with, right? Come into that. The 3-day event scheduled for January the 20th to the 22nd will also see participation from Chairman Richard Duncan and Mr. Thomas Anthony, CEO of the Grenada Investment and Migration Agency, aka the CBI. This Wilton Park dialogue will bring together leaders from the Eastern Caribbean states who are running citizen by investment programs, along with relevant regional and global stakeholders. Now, I don't need to tell you all anymore about this thing, this meeting there. So, the trip in China, the visit ended on the 17th, and on the 20th, there is this meeting in the UK. What they're not telling us is where the Prime Minister been, right? Where the Prime Minister been from the 17th to the 20th, if at all he made it to the UK on the 20th. Now, I would go back to this thing which tells us here that the Prime Minister, Honorable Deacon Mitchell, returns to the state on Tuesday, the 21st of January, 2025. Now, this CBI meeting here ends on the 22nd. The Prime Minister returns to the state here, they told us, on the 21st of January, right? Which was Tuesday. That didn't happen. But let's come back to the substantive point here. Now, my investigation told me that the executive secretary and the press secretary went from China to the UK. They went to wait for the PM so they could come back together. The Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, and his CBI friends, Andrea St. Bernard, and the Chief of Staff, Teddy St. Louis, went to Dubai to an event hosted by the Henshen Group. That's Mr. Liende, right? So they ain't telling us that at all. No mention of the Prime Minister going to Dubai. The event was on the 18th of January, right? So if you look on the screen, I have the invitation of one of the guests. I had to blot out name for security reasons. And there is the Prime Minister shaking hands with one of the guests. I had to remove the guest as well for his protection, really. You all don't have to know where I get my thing from. Where I get my source. You all know how to know that, right? But that is the Prime Minister. That photo is of the Prime Minister in Dubai. Yes, in Dubai. And my friends, on the 20th of of January. That was Monday. Well, all of the weekend, of course, we know he wasn't in the UK, but since they tried to tell us that he was in the UK, I said, okay, maybe he was in two places at once, or maybe I got false information. So let me check the UK to see if they have any record, any news, any information of the Prime Minister in the UK, in London. Zit, nothing. As the young people say, crickets. Nobody, not even the mission, the consulate in the UK had any information on our Prime Minister and his whereabouts. He definitely was not in the UK. But the KG. The KG.
Following his official visit to the People's Republic of China, Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell is participating in the Future of Citizenship by Investment event at Wilton Park, London, which began on Monday. This three-day event is also being attended by Chairman Richard Duncan and Mr. Thomas Anthony, CEO of Grenada's Investment by Migration Agency. The Wilton Park Dialogue brings together leaders from Eastern Caribbean states who are running citizenship by investment programs, along with relevant regional and global stakeholders, academic experts, and senior representatives.
Now, GBN brought a news item with the Prime Minister being in the UK on this CBI adventure. And for once, there was no photo ops, there was no little video of the Prime Minister walking into the meeting, sitting at the meeting. Nothing. There was a still photo of the Prime Minister posted whilst the news item was going on, right? And that is because the Prime Minister was not there in the UK when they were talking about him being in the UK. He was in Dubai. All along, according to the press secretary, the Prime Minister was in the UK. Now, I'm not sure when the Prime Minister went over to the UK, because he must go to the UK in transit to Grenada. So I'm not sure when he left Dubai. Even on Monday the 20th, as I said before, there was no information, there was no trace of Prime Minister Deacon Williams in the UK. The Office of the High Commission had no record of the Prime Minister being in the UK. The release stated that the Prime Minister participated in a Citizen by Investment event at Wilton Park from the 20th to the 22nd of January 2025. One Alison Herland, the Senior Program Director in the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office in Wilton Park. Now, she's the one to know of a meeting of such. That is, if it was a regular meeting and not some secret service meeting. She was confused. She knew nothing of such a meeting. Unless, as she said, it was something really private and they didn't go through the office, her office, to hold this meeting. Now, why would a meeting with Commonwealth heads of government be so secretive? Is it to do with our countries and the citizens or is it to do with agents? Why is it such a secretive meeting? By the way, Wilton Park is not in London. Let me just say that to whoever sent out that release. Wilton Park is not in London. Do your homework. There was nothing on the Wilton Park website either. Nothing. The question is, what is the secret? The cover-up? Why couldn't you tell us the Prime Minister went to Dubai after China? And don't make it seem as though the Prime Minister went from China to the UK, when that's a blatant lie. You guys continue to be deceptive. You continue to tell lies to the people of Grenada, to the state of Grenada. What is he hiding? What is the Prime Minister hiding? Why did you went to an event, a Henshin event? Yes, you did. Tell us that. That's another licky-ticky. Oh my God. The Prime Minister has spent 3 days, my friends. 3 days on island for the new year. 3 days. For the new year. The second release said he was due back on the 21st. The first one said on the 17th. I'm not even aware that he's back. We just do not know when, and it's just a total mess, my friends. So we're moving along. It will all end. It will all end one day. It will all end. I ask myself over and over, what has we done? What have we done as a people to deserve that? You know, it is so sad. It is heartbreaking. Because what we wanted change, no? We wanted change. And we were promised transformation. So, in closing last week's episode, I spoke of the legislatures denied the workers of data regarding the amount they would receive. I asked for the numbers to show what pension workers will receive, because you're not telling them. You're not telling them what they will receive. You know, another secret. So I did some investigation and I got some help to understand and to put together a chart there. On the screen you'd see. So a teacher who's been in the system for already 8 years, we used that individual as a sample, falling under the SUSU savings scheme at 31 years, the individual is 31 years old. At retirement age, at 60, will only save roughly $104,000. So if you look on the screen, you'd see the chart there. And you see the salaries. We did like the increase 5%, an assumed salary increase of 4% at minimum was considered for each year. And then you have the years from 31 years old to 60 years old, right? Then we have the monthly credit, 6%, both employer and employee, 3%. In this column here. And then we end up with the annual credit, the amount. And we've came up with $104,328.93. You understand? So we subtract, when you subtract the 25%, the so-called gratuity, it leaves that individual with a balance of $78,000 for the rest of their lives. 78,000. Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell and his cabinet and his pension committee have not told the people that once your savings done, your pension done as well. I challenge the Prime Minister. I challenge Cinty daughter to tell me a lie. Whereas whatever little they were getting from NIS, or what they would get from the 1958 pension plan, is for life. As long as you're alive, you receive. And when you die, your estate, your family, whoever you left behind will continue to receive a pension from the NIS and from the 1958 pension plan. Now, something that bothered me, and I had to do my research on, is the pronouncement made by the Prime Minister every time he spoke of pension. And he says that the 4,500 workers on contract had no pension to get until he rode in with on his white horse to save them. A load of BS. Listen to this clip.
And I will go on record to say it was extremely disappointing that when we invited the Trades Unions Council to nominate a representative to serve on the Pension Reform Committee, they refused to do so. They refused to be part of the process of shaping a bill for other workers who do not have a pension. For other workers who do not have a pension. And this bill has ramifications for even people who work for unions. Because they know, and we know, that many of the workers of the unions themselves do not benefit from a pension plan. So an opportunity is presented to people who should be representing workers. Mr. Speaker, there are approximately 4,500 government employees who do not have any entitlement to a pension as we speak. Let me repeat that. There are approximately 4,500 government of Grenada employees employed under all kinds of modes, largely by an NNP administration, who do not have any entitlement to a pension. How did that come about?
And that's a lie. And that's a lie. Now, how could this guy stand up in the parliament and spew such lies? That is not true. 4,500 workers, he said, These persons, NIS, are being paid for almost all of these. If there is a percentage of them that are not paying, and it is a very small percentage, and those are the big shots who get their big contracts. Short contracts, well, sometimes they say for a year, and it can be extended, who have jobs other places and have their contracts with the government, and they're being told, and it's done even now, and they're being told that they have to pay their own taxes and NIS. Right? These 4,500 workers the Prime Minister speak of, they are entitled to NIS. And I couldn't let him, I don't know why. The opposition never came up and talked about it. The media never questioned it. Why is he allowed to continue to tell lies, to deceive the nation? And you hear the arrogance in his voice when he said it. He's mad. He's upset that these 4,500 workers had no pension to get. So here I am, the hero, swinging from vines to come to save you all. He said it again on Beyond the Headlines. And the host never questioned it. Here, listen.
There are a lot of people who will tell you about constitution and constitutionality and all kind of stories. You have to ask yourself, if you're one of the 4,500 plus persons who don't have a pension.
Folks, that's downright deception. As I said, if there's a percentage of workers who have not had their NIS contribution paid by the government of Grenada, it's minuscule. These workers would be getting NIS pension, which is a bigger and better pension than this SUSU scheme. That is, if it continues. Because if these workers take their 3% and went to the credit unions or an insurance company to save or invest their monies, they would be better off at the age 60. They would have monies for the rest of their lives. With this SUSU Society Savings Scheme, the same lot that the Prime Minister, is pretending to save, going to end up on the seed program. That's where they'll end up. You know, I had a laugh when I heard him say, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me." But he accustomed speaking on himself. And out of context, mouth open words jump out. The Prime Minister was actually speaking on himself there, because there were the same set of workers they told in 2022 to vote for NDC and we will regularize you, make you permanent. One public service, he said.
And there will be one public service. If you are working for and on behalf of the state of Grenada and you are fulfilling a permanent job, there is no need to have you branded as an Imani worker, and there is no need for you to be placed on contract. You will be regularized and made part of the public service.
One public service, meaning we would make you permanent. And once you're permanent under the service, you would be eligible for the 1958 pension plan, like all officers, right? Immediately on entering, they changed that. And they start speaking about pension reform. The stroke of a pen disappeared. Regularizing by the stroke of a pen. That went out the window. And pension reform came through. And a SUSU Society Savings Scheme was presented to you all. So, this election, they're going to say to you, we saved you. You didn't have a pension to get. That's fooling you twice, ain't it? Fool me twice, shame on me. So the first fool was, we're going to regularize you. We're going to make you permanent. One public service. There's no need, as Cornwall had said, there's no need for a parallel service, public service. We're going to make you permanent. You're going to get the benefits. The Prime Minister actually said that in one of his clips. You're going to get the benefits of a permanent worker, which is the 1958 non-contributory pension plan. But this time they're going to tell y'all didn't have a pension plan, and we bring a pension plan for you. You were not going to get a pension. And you know, NIS deductions are coming out of your salary every month, and you're paying your contribution. So you're going to let them tell you that you had no pension, and we came to save you, and we're going to give you a pension. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Eh? And the deal this time is there is no pension plan for you, right? It's a new dawn, he said. When people say what they will do, they do what they say they will do.
But a new day was dawning. A day when people actually do the things they say they will do.
But that is not what you told them. What you said is that you would regularize them. Let me take that over. I kind of stayed a little too. But that is not what you told them before. What you said was that you would regularize them by 12 months in office.
Following lock-in in step with the issue of the payment of the pensions is the issue of the regularization of the status of contract workers and Imani workers in Grenada. A government is supposed to lead by example. A government is supposed to uphold the laws and set the example. The rule of law applies as much to the government, most of the government, than its citizens. I have repeatedly said, if the task you are performing, if the job you are filling is a job that is always required by the entity that you work for, in this case, the government of Grenada, then there should be no issue of you being on a temporary or a fixed-term contract. Your employment should be permanent, your employment should be indefinite, and all of the benefits that comes with that should be attributed to your employment. And therefore, the National Democratic Congress commits to regularizing the status of contract workers who are working for the government and Imani workers who are working for the government within 12 months of assuming office. At my very first press conference on becoming political leader of the National Democratic Congress, I made it clear that under National Democratic Congress government, there
Then when the heat in the kitchen was too hot, Alzheimer's stepped in. And you said you never said so. Let's hear you.
We never said we would regularize the public service in 12 months. We said we would regularize it. And we have begun to do so.
But Prime Minister, you just said it. You did say the NDC would regularize in the contract workers in 12 months, sir. I think they say coconut oil good for memory. Get some coconut oil. So in order to fool them twice, you came up with the Kokamimi plan that you love them so much that you've organized a special pension plan for them. hogwash. And oh, to the permanent workers, we're not going to interfere with you, with the established workers' pension. But you already said any workers hired from now on will go under the Susu Society plan. Isn't that interfering with the established workers' pension plan, the 1958 pension plan? Because once you enter the service, whether you enter permanently or not, what I gather from you, any worker entering the plan from the 1st of January will go under the Susu Society Saving Scheme. Say you.
I want the established officers to understand. We are not interfering with their rights.
He went on to say that they will be hired under the Susu.
A teacher who's hired tomorrow.
Yes.
What is the regime they come under?
They will come under the new pension regime.
Will they be defined as a quote-unquote established worker, and hence why the new one as opposed to the old?
I'm saying to you, obviously, I just made the point of we're saying we have the right to hire you in terms of the appropriate mode, right? And therefore, this whole notion of established and non-established workers is a notion that ultimately, I'm going to use this word, will no longer be of any distinction with a meaning.
The head of the chairman of the Pension Review Committee, Dr. Curlin Gilchrist, admitted that they would eventually phase out the 1958 pension plan in this clip.
The fundamental disagreement here, as perhaps being articulated by the union, is the idea that this particular scheme sort of resembles the Pension Disqualification Act that we had back during the Revolution. And that here you have a situation again where you're having two different types of pension schemes, while at the same time you have a situation where government, yes, they're attempting to regularize those contract employees as well.
Yes, but let me quickly jump in. But remember, you only have two schemes initially.
Yes.
Going forward, you'll have the two pension schemes, right? But going forward, new entrants into the public service would be assigned to the new scheme. So eventually, maybe over about 50 years or so, you would not have any employees under the existence of the current pension scheme.
You mean the non-contributory pension scheme?
Yeah,
the non-contributory one. Okay.
Because what would happen is that anybody being employed would fall under the new pension scheme.
There you have it, as clear as crystal. But they're not interfering with the established workers. But even if you join the service now as an established worker, you are not falling under the 1958 pension plan. But they're not interfering with the established workers. Okay? It's going to phase out. They're going to phase that out, and all of you are going to be under the Susu. I ended last week's episode by drawing reference to Section 26 of the Public Finance Management Act 2015. I believe I said there, Section 26 of the Constitution. I spoke of the Constitution so much the thing stuck in my head. No, it's Section 26. It's not of the Constitution. It's Section 26 of the Public Finance Management Act 2025. And to put things in perspective, let me read to you that act, that section quickly. In each, subsection 1, in each fiscal year, every proposed legislation submitted for approval by Parliament shall, and let's not forget what shall means, right? In legislations, in law, shall be accompanied by a fiscal impact analysis stating the proposed legislation estimated effect on revenues and expenditure. Now, what I just read there, in essence, says that there's a document. There's a document with the fiscal impact analysis that has to be attached to the legislations to go to the Parliament. So in other words, you're not going to the Parliament with the laws by itself. You have to attach this estimate, right? And this is by law. For the fiscal year in which the legislation would become effective, as well as the legislation fiscal impact on multi-year planning and budgeting. Subsection 2, the minister shall prepare detailed instructions regarding the nature of the analysis to be done and the process of validating the fiscal impact. Subsection 3, the minister shall provide an opinion to Parliament on the adequacy of such fiscal impact analysis. Nothing so was done. It's a money bill, and therefore the proposed legislation submitted for approval by Parliament shall be accompanied by a fiscal impact analysis. Was that done? No. And so that bill should be null and void. A clear case of going against the law. So I was saying, Section 26 of the Public Finance Management Act 2025 is not the only legislation ignored and broken by this rogue administration. Section 93 of the Constitution was removed from the Constitution to accommodate for the new Susu Society Savings Scheme. Call it what you want. They have changed the Constitution. The Public Service Commission has no role in the new Pension Act, which changes what the Constitution said in this Section 93. The new Act excludes Section 93. They have effectively changed the benefits of the workers, and in doing so, changed the structure of the public service. They have cancelled Section 93, which is in effect an amendment of the Constitution. And according to law, we can only do so through a referendum. Did we have a referendum? I'm a lawyer. I could do what I want. Section 93 of the Constitution speaks to the power to withhold pension and the power of the Public Service Commission. It reads, subsection 1, where under any law by pension or authority has a discretion to decide whether or not any pension benefits shall be granted, or B, to withhold, reduce in amount, or suspend any such benefits that have been granted. Those benefits shall be granted and may not be withheld, reduced in amount, or suspended unless the Public Service Commission concurs in the refusal to grant the benefits, or, as the case may be, in the decision to withhold them, reduce them in amount, or suspend them. Subsection 2. Where the amount of any pension benefits that may be granted to him or her shall be the greatest amount for which he or she is eligible, unless the Public Service Commission concurs in his or her being granted benefits of a smaller amount. The Public Service Commission has the power, the only institution that has the power here, besides the worker. And the worker have the right to choose which pension they want to fall under. The better one, of course. Subsection 3 of Section 98. The Public Service Commission shall not concur under subsection 1 or 2 of this section in any action taken on the ground that any person who holds or has held the office of judge or the Court of Appeal, judge of the High Court, director of public prosecution, or director of audit has been guilty of misbehavior in that office, unless he or she has been removed from that office by reason of such misbehavior. Subsection 4. Before the Public Service Commission concurs under subsection 1 and 2 of this section in any action taken on the ground that any person who holds or has held any office to which at the time of such action, section 87 of the Constitution applies, has been guilty of misbehavior in that office, the Public Service Commission shall consult the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. Subsection 6. Again, stating the benefits to one's estate. In this section, pension benefits means any pension, compensation, gratuity, or other allowances of pensions in respect of the services as judges or public officers, or for the widows, children, dependents, or personal representatives of such persons in such service. The Deacon Mitchell-led administration built a new structure and took it to Parliament illegally. No wonder why the Prime Minister plainly trivialized the Public Service Commission, like he did tourism, the Tourism Authority, and, It's all about him. It's, well, I told you all already. There's just one actor in this movie. Just one. The entire movie. One actor. No supporting actor, no actress, no supporting actress. It's just one actor. Our legislatures went to Parliament and passed that illegal bill. Well, we all know the ayes have it. The ayes always have it. And therefore, the bill was passed. Now, our Constitution holds the fundamental principles and laws that governs the state. Or else, we don't need one, right? It established how powers is distributed. It defines the rights and duties of citizens and describes the main institutions of the state. A constitution describes how power is distributed between branches of government, such as the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. It also describes the relationship between national and state levels of governments. The Constitution guarantees certain rights of the people of the state. It places limits on the exercise of power. It is the supreme law of the land, meaning that no other law may conflict with it. Speaking on the new SUSU pension saving plan, this is what the attorney at law, Jimmy Bristol, KC, had to say.
This particular bill chalk up or compare, and before we get into the weeds, as I said, in relation to the specific issues, the specific bones of contention here, how does this one chalk up to the other issues you've dealt with in the past?
Well, first, I want to address Dr. Gilchrist. Now, I notice he's an economist. Money can never trounce and trump and overtake and subsume constitutional rights. And that seems to be the talk. What it's going to cost, and it's going to cost, especially when it comes to these so-called contract workers. I say so-called because that's what it is. Now, on the consultation, from my perspective, because my perspective is a little different to the PWs, they're interested in the mechanics and of the scheme and how it works. I'm interested primarily in the legal aspect of it. And I just like to say, there's no consultation really required from anyone, really required as to the legal aspects, because the Constitution is there. Section 92, which is the pension rights, is there. And the several enactments are there. We all know that. And all the government had to do is to give effect to those bits of legislation. So even if, and I wouldn't think that the union will have too much to do with the constitutional aspect, except insofar as it concerns these so-called contract workers. Now, I know, and I only received a copy of the bill, I don't know, less than 14 days ago. It was sent to the Bar Association. And that, if they were seeking consultation, when it was ready to be tabled before Parliament, it's impossible for there to be any meaningful input by the Bar Association within that time. So I think that the notion of consultation is illusory and is a figment of someone's imagination.
Again, here is Attorney James Bristol, KC, on contract workers.
Non-contributory pension scheme because it is unsustainable.
But that's fair
Is
enough.
that what you're hearing, Mr. Bristol?
Yeah, but that's fair enough. That's fair enough. The government can introduce, under Section 92 of the Constitution, a new pension scheme. Now, and I don't like this word employee, the Constitution does not speak to employees. The government is trying to put a gloss on the Constitution, in fact, tantamount, I think, to amending the Constitution. It speaks of public officers, okay? The public service, it does not speak of employees. Now, public officers are spoken to in 92, as defined by 111, what's a public officer, are entitled to a pension. So the existing ones, quite rightly, as Dr. Gilchrist said, you always, once you join and that's the scheme that's in place, the 58, that's yours forever. Of course, it's burdensome to the government because it's non-contributory. So the government can introduce this proposed new scheme for people joining the public service, right, as public officers after that time. They can also add statutory bodies and they could add anybody else in. But we are concerned here about the public officers, the public service, because that's what the Constitution speaks to, because pension is a right. Okay, now, so the selling of this new scheme to the public, from what I've just heard and what I've heard before, is that every employee is now going to get it and those who aren't established are not going to get it and so forth. The selling of this new thing is cost, okay? Because the government has to provide a pension scheme. And the issue here is, to whom does the existing pension regime apply, and to whom will the new one apply? And that's really Section 3 of the bill. Because the question of contract workers and employees, which is not a concept in the Constitution, is being utilized quite heavily. And it's confusing. I don't understand the wording because it's not very well drafted or thought out. And maybe I'm just not clever enough, but nevertheless, it is problematic. And we cannot get around
and Mr. Bristol, yes, I don't mean to cut you, but I will share part that specific
Section 3. Let's look at Section 3.
And we can examine the areas of that you are concerned about. I will go ahead and share that screen right now. And of course, as the learned attorney here, you can guide me.
Right. So Section 3, subsection 1 is the application of the Act. It says this Act shall apply to A, all new public sector employees. Now, in the definition section, public sector employee, new public sector employees includes public officers. That's fine. But then we get some qualifications going forward. B, all public sector employees. There's no such thing in the Constitution. What are you talking about? You have, in the Act, you have new public sector employees, which includes public officers, and then you have another definition, public sector employees. Okay? But under public sector employees, B2, have neither attained the age of 50 years nor been employed with the government for a period exceeding 50 years and are not eligible to receive a pension, gratuity, or other allowance in accordance with a relevant enactment. Now, I don't know to whom that is referring. It is not clear to whom that is referring. But more so, and again, it's referring to employees. So once we say that those employees do not include public sector, public officers, that's fine. But the question is, who is an employee? Because governments, from time immemorial, have been taking people outside of the public service, calling them employees on contract and not public officers. And that, if it's referring to those people or any one of those people, then in my view, it's unconstitutional. Once you're holding a public office, your appointment has to be via the Public Service Commission in accordance with Section 84(1) of the Constitution. And all of these contracts that have been used and kept confidential, I saw one or two recently, are questionable as to the efficacy and their constitutionality, because many of them purport to appoint public officers on contract by bodies, sometimes a cabinet secretary, sometimes a permanent secretary. I saw one with the Public Service Commission appointing, but they were appointing someone to an established post for a limited period with disciplinary proceedings and benefits outside of the Constitution, which is Section 92 pension, and the provisions and protections of the public service regulations, which have a disciplinary procedure set out. So these are the problems. Now, if you look at...
Here's the PRO of the Public Workers Union. It's Daisy Hazard on contract workers.
But Ms. Hazard, you've heard Dr. Gilchrist here. He indicated that unions were invited on the table for consultation. Of course, I just want to make the point that we here on the Bub Report, we held several programs in which this issue of pension was discussed. And of course, the union's argument, and I'm sure that would be your argument as well, and your contention, is that your invitation to the table was done in an ad hoc way and not done in a way as to give the union the leverage to negotiate what this outcome should look like. So I want you to speak to that, but also speak to, and of course we will get into the weeds, if you will, of that particular legislation, but speak to the what Dr. Gilchrist just said in respect of having a pension plan that for those 4,000 plus unestablished employees, that would be a benefit to them, such that they would not have to exist in poverty, if you will.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Good morning, and it's the Christmas season, so Merry Christmas. It's the end of the year. I should be busy cleaning, but
yes.
This was a priority. We had to drop everything and ensure that our union was represented on your program this morning, because the content, what we are discussing here, is so important. It's so critically important to Grenada, not just today, but in perpetuity, into the future. It was so important that our union dropped it. And Dr. Gilchrist, good morning. It is very, very good that as a representative of the Public Workers Union, the union with the largest public sector worker body, we represent the largest number of public servants. So it's very, very good that I'm having a conversation with you finally, that our union is finally getting to have a conversation with you on pension reform. Unfortunately, it is after the fact, because we've seen a bill that went through 3 stages of Parliament and was passed on Friday. And I want to use a phrase that you just used here, that the conversation should be how best it can work so that workers can retire, not into poverty, but going home with a pension. But Dr. Gilchrist, you would appreciate that this conversation is happening now after we have had a bill that has been passed in the Parliament by our MPs. And our MPs in the Parliament make up the majority. So the question is this bill going to go through? Or is time going to be taken now to have the conversations that should have happened before? Now, let's make the position of the PWU very clear. Our mandate as a union is the benefit, betterment, social justice, and advancement of workers' rights. The Pension and Gratuity Act that was reinstated in Grenada in June of 2022 was not political work, but was the work, the back-breaking, hard work, sweat and tears of trade unionists, of the PWU, and every other union that represents public sector workers. So there is no other group, there is no other organization in this country, be it political or otherwise, that has taken on the fight, that has championed and sought justice for workers in Grenada, public workers, when it comes to pension and gratuity. Let's just put that on the table here today for clarity. So our interest is to ensure that all of our workers, all of our members, every single person who labor in the vineyard of public service in Grenada, when it is time to retire to go home, must go home with a suitable pension. That's our premise. Our contention is that as a union, as a sovereign union with a responsibility, a right, and the right to be able to discuss whatever pension reform should look like going forward for all members, we were not given that opportunity. The PWU is not the TUC. We do not speak on behalf of the TUC. We cannot speak on behalf of the TUC. We are a sovereign union, and when we were excluded out of the process, when we were not given the opportunity, we went before government, kneeling, supplicating, begging for months to have meaningful, not an hour here or there, by the way, but meaningful consultation on for the benefit of our workers. We were not given that opportunity.
Here again is Mr. Hazard giving the union's stance on the SUSU plan.
Dr. Gilchrist said a number of things here this morning, which seems to represent the thinking of the administration that is not being said to the public. And I think we should be grateful that on this program this morning, he has been candid enough to admit that the intention is to phase out the manner in which public officers should be properly hired and established, and in effect, undertake constitutional reform. That's a sinister plot that all of us as Grenadians should reject. The other thing I want to say again to Dr. Gilchrist, which you pointed out to him, based on the arguments that the union has been putting forward today and also in the public space for the last year and a half, we are not fundamentally opposed to any pension reform that will benefit workers. So there's no argument there. Dr. Gilchrist again comes back to saying where the conversation ought to be. So what I believe will be happening here after today's program, Dr. Gilchrist is going to be going back to the cabinet, to the administration, and say, I believe that there ought to be more conversation on this bill. And as you have presented it to the public and passed it in Parliament on Wednesday, it cannot go forward and should not go forward. Because by his own acknowledgement here today, he has repeatedly said where the conversation ought to go. And the conversation cannot go anyway if our MPs, if our sitting MPs in Parliament decides to go forward with the fundamentally flawed bill that has been proposed to our country in the Parliament on Wednesday of last week. The union has been saying it. We have taken a barrage of backlash. Personally, I've been accosted in the public space in Grenada, June 29th of this year, for simply saying we must not sit by and allow a pension reform that is going to mire our society in the chaos and the confusion that it has been in for over 40 years because there was a flawed bill that violated the Constitution. This is what the union is saying, that in the interest of social justice, in the interest of peace and harmony of the society, in the interest of fairness, of parity for all workers, any pension reform must follow the parameters that our Constitution sets out, so that we will not come back to a situation where we are sitting in our rocking chairs 30 years from now, 20 years from now, and seeing workers in Grenada, public sector employees, back on the streets with politicians marching behind them. Because let us be clear, when unions were fighting to restore pension rights for public workers that no politician and no political party in this country had the moral fortitude and temerity to do and the guts to do, unions did it. And as I reminded our Attorney General, Sister Claudette Joseph, Minister Claudette Joseph, Senator Claudette Joseph, on Facebook, because she's busy in the Facebook space discussing the pension reform bill. And it's unfortunate that she did not find the time away from Facebook to be present here today to discuss this with us. They were marching behind us while we were fighting for pension rights. These set of politicians, the Prime Minister was not there. He had not yet entered anything, the political fray at all. But we were fighting for those rights. And we cannot sit by as unions and look at those rights that we have restored in the interest of peace and harmony and social justice in this country. 2 years later, not even 10 or 20, by an administration who came into office and said, we will regularize workers and we will pay pension. I listened to the words of our Honorable Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell again, just prior to winning the elections in 2022, saying, when and should we win, and when we win, we will pay pensions. Pensions is not a finite thing. You don't pay pensions and you're done with it. So when that promise was made, it was made on the back of the work of unions who restored, and the Court of Grenada, which properly upheld the Constitution of Grenada and restored pensions. So let us ask our Honorable Prime Minister, and let us ask the present administration, when you made those bold claims and declarations to Grenada, and our Prime Minister is a legal mind, he's a lawyer, we're proud of him. When you made those bold declarations to Grenada, that you're going to pay the pension 1958, and that you are going to regularize existing workers who are not regularized and established in the public sector, when you made those bold promises, in effect, you were fooling and attempting to trick the Grenadian people. That's the only conclusion we can come to, because that bold claim was made on the premise of the newly restored 1958 Pension Act.
She continued on the bill.
We have always said we are willing to entertain pension in a manner that the society can be comfortable with. But what we will not do, what I, as someone who has already earned my pension and is properly covered, what I will not do while I'm in the chair and I'm in the seat in the PW, I will not sit by and allow an administration that came into office promising to pay pension, promising to regularize workers, to present and pass a flawed bill to the public, to workers, that is forevermore going to create chaos in our society. This is a Christmas season. I said it a couple days ago. Government and unions, government and the PWU should have been able to stand and smile and shake hands in our parliament in Grenada on Wednesday, because we should have been passing a bill that everybody would have been happy with. We should have been passing a bill that we could have decked out with Christmas garlands to present to the people of Grenada. Rather than that, the government sneaked in a bill on the eve of Christmas, when we're busy, when we're dealing with flood waters. Our union only received notice that this bill was going to be tabled in Parliament on Friday. That was Friday last. So you had Monday, Tuesday for the union to look at that bill and to discuss it. A bill that is going to implicate its members and affect its members. Government of Grenada only sent that bill, that proposed that draft bill to our union on the Friday night. Well, ahead of that bill being tabled on Wednesday. And that's an attempt to sneak into the public space a bill that is flawed, a bill that should not be passed, because fundamentally it is not good for workers and not good for Grenada. In the long run, it will not be good. It will mire our society in controversy and chaos. And I believe government has a responsibility to, one, respect the Constitution of Grenada, and two, respect the unions that represent workers, and two, respect the people of Grenada.
And is that. Now here is Dr. Gilchrist on contract workers.
Now, as we speak, we have public workers, people working for government, retiring with only a handshake. As we speak and as we ramble and scrabble over this thing, they are retiring with nothing as we speak. And I can tell you that the public workers, those who are not established, are anxiously awaiting this bill. They are anxiously awaiting this bill, because this bill, and I'm not getting to all the other issues, this bill would on retirement give them at least 85% of the income combined with NS and what the pension is given. So this bill is really a top up to NS. So the simple point I'm making, while we argue about the technicalities, we have people going home with nothing. And I don't think the union get this, I don't think they get it. I want to make the point that all of them are properly secured. We have a group of people going home every day with nothing. The government is attempting to remedy that situation. So let's stay focused. It's all about people. It's not about ourselves. It's all about people. I'm not saying that there may be issues that need to be addressed, but there's an urgency, all right? Not for public employees, quote unquote, to go home without any pension. There's an urgency. We have at least 4,000 workers. That should be the concern. Putting something in place to address that now. But I'm not seeing the emphasis on the urgency on part of the union, those executive members of the union who are properly secured. I'm not seeing that emphasis, and the urgency to address over 4,000 workers working for the government who may retire without anything. I'm not seeing that, and I'm saying
those are the same workers this NDC administration fooled into voting for them for regularization. One public service, they even gave the analogy of two public workers sitting next to each other, one getting the 1958 pension and the other NIS. They gave that analogy. And that was the reason for saying one public service. So one pension. Attorney James Bristol, QC, rebuttal to Dr. Gilchrist, pay the people as promised.
Yeah. I mean, it's very difficult for me to sit back and listen to this rhetoric. I'm sorry, Mr. Gilchrist. First, you start off like a politician and not a consultant, right? You start off by trying or saying that the union executive are okay jack, so they don't care about the people. Don't do that on this forum. That sort of thing is for politicians. Now, right? The union has never said they don't want the Pension Act, but it's how you do what you want to do. While you are saying, and the government is selling the act on the basis and trying to damage the union at the same time, on the basis that we've got so many thousand or hundred unestablished workers who need this. There's no doubt about that. But why is the government at the same time trying to deprive public officers of their rights under the existing legislation, which are better than this proposed legislation? They're doing that by the way they've crafted Section 3. And some of those, or probably many of those so-called unestablished workers that Mr. Gilchrist is referring to, who we feel so sorry for, are people who should properly benefit from the better existing legislation. And they're depriving many of those 4,000 from the better benefits under the existing legislation by trying to circumvent the provisions of the Constitution. So it's disingenuous, Mr. Gilchrist, to say what you have said. Very disingenuous, because you're not facing the legal reality, which is that the constitutional rights under Section 92 of so-called unestablished, which are probably established if you look at the facts, right? Because you can't put a contract to take away people's rights. Many of those people are probably entitled right now to pension. So it's not this new bill that's giving them pension. They're probably entitled to it as we speak under the existing law. What about them? So the union is fighting for everybody who's entitled under existing legislation to receive that entitlement and to ensure that the new regime applies to new workers coming in, new public officers, which is correct. The Constitution allows for that. Fair enough. And the mechanics and so forth and nitty-gritty to be worked out. That's not a problem. The problem is these so-called unestablished or contract workers. That is the problem.
Now, Dr. Gilchrist had a comeback.
That's why I said that's where the conversation should have been. I mean, the Senate will be meeting, I believe, on the 27th, and there's an opportunity again, as the minister representing the bill, to have further discussion and dialogue. And we look forward to meaningful dialogue and to ensure that what will emerge will be a bill that has consensus by our stakeholders. Let's hope that's a final outcome. So, I mean, even the program this morning, I'm very happy we're having this conversation. I'm very happy.
In the end, Dr. Gilchrist, the chair of the Pension Review Committee, more or less conceded, agreeing there is room for improvement in the Susu scheme?
Simply put, this is a very important piece of legislation initiative by the government. We do have the Senate next week, so then another opportunity, right, to look at the bill clause by clause, objectives, targets, intentions, and what the bill proposed to achieve. And I believe there were good points made on this program, and I believe there is always room for improvement. So let's look forward to what happens next Friday. I mean, at the end of the day, all of us want what's best for people.
And here is Attorney James Bristol, KC's closing statements. All compliments the Bub report.
My duty has always been to see the right done, the right thing done. I have no iron in the fire. I never have had. And I'm appealing to the government. I really am, truly appealing to the government. There's a golden opportunity, as Dr. Gilchrist said. This is a very important bit of legislation. It is. And therefore, it should be accorded the scrutiny, and people should, as wide a consultation as possible. I think the consultation in general has taken place, but the worrying constitutional point to which I've referred all morning. And it is an easy solution. If they ask me, I can do it in 5 minutes, and that will cure that problem. And I really hope for Grenada that the government's stated intentions to so-called regularize these workers, in fact, comes to pass. Because, if this law is passed, those irregular or contract workers, according to the law, they haven't got a leg on which to stand. So they've got to go in first, you see, or at least there's got to be an undertaking. The Senator list that all these people are considered, pending formalities, part of the existing public service, okay, and pensionable under 92. You've got to do something like that if you want to get the legislation done in this sitting. Fair enough, but there's got to be something like that. And I'm only appealing because it's the right thing to do. And I hope that my message is taken in the right light,
Attorney-at-Law James Bristol, KC, on behalf of the Public Workers Union, wrote to the government of Grenada, and I read, Dear Attorney General, Repension Reform Public Sector Employees Pension Fund Bill 2024, the bill. We continue to act on behalf, and he's writing from the office of Henry and Bristol. He says, we continue to act on behalf of Public Workers Union, the union. We are instructed by the union that the government has failed and or refused to engage with them despite the government's assurance at a meeting of the 30th of October 2024, wherein government unequivocally expressed a manifest willingness to address the concerns advanced on behalf of the union. The government has now circulated the bill, and on behalf of the union, we hereby seek clarification in respect thereof in light of sections 84(1), 92, and 101, subsection 1 of the Constitution. We draw particular attention to subsections 3, 1b, 2, 3, 1c, and 3, 2a, and 3, 2b, which are unclear as to whom is intended to be affected and or deemed eligible for membership. The union remains amendable in its diligent endeavors to engage with the government and anticipates the government's steadfast commitment to the equitable treatment of public officers and the lawful administration to a reform pension plan. Yours truly, Henry and Bristol, copy to the Office of the Prime Minister and copy to the Department of Public Administration. We also heard from the President of the Teachers Union, Jude Bartholomew.
In a special address on Christmas Eve, GUT President Jude Bartholomew hailed the new Public Sector Employees Pension Fund Bill as a plus, and in his words, a Christmas pension greeting for unestablished workers within the public service.
This new administration, they dig deep and do what they have to do to make sure that these workers, unestablished workers who are suffering for a long time, working hard, really and truly making their contribution to the states and going home empty-handed in poverty, that will be no more. So we want to put on record that is a good thing, and the GUT, the teachers, we support that in principle, so that a new day is dawning during this Christmas time for the workers who work tirelessly and were going home without a pension. So we say kudos to this administration.
The pension fund has been a hot topic in recent days, with many questioning its legality, and some trade unionists have expressed concern that it may place added financial constraints on workers who are already on the lower end of the pay spectrum. Bartholomew says while they support the bill in principle, they are somewhat concerned that they were not afforded the opportunity to study the document and provide feedback before it was tabled in Parliament.
What we have a little problem in the sense is that we did not, yes, the documents were sent to GUT, but it was only just a few days. And in short order, we heard that was going to be debated in Parliament, that bill. And that is a problem, not enough time by the administration for GUT and for workers or teachers to really discuss. And you know, this bill is complicated. The legal terms and all those things in this bill, what happens, the union basically will seek its lawyers to get legal interpretation and legal guidance on that, because there are a lot of things there that is complicated, and I'm sure the nation will appreciate that. And so you need to involve legal minds to give you guidance.
He believes all workers should enjoy the benefits of the 1958 pension and is asking for sufficient time to pursue the bill.
We need really and truly time to interpret, to understand what is there going forward. So we're asking the government of Grenada to give us or afford us the opportunity, all right? Give us the opportunity as teachers, as the GUT, to really and truly some more time so that we can study the document, study that bill, study it and such, and to see how it's going to really and truly affect our members going forward.
So, he support the bill. It's a wonderful thing. It's the best thing that could happen this Christmas season. But he ain't read and understand the bill yet. He come back and he say they need time to interpret and to understand the bill. They need a legal mind to explain the bill. We need legal minds to explain the bill. But it is a wonderful... Is this guy a teacher? And is he heading the teachers' union? Isn't that embarrassing for you teachers? To have this guy speaking on your behalf? He praised the government for the bill. You don't know what the bill entails, but you think you know it's a wonderful thing. And in the same breath, you come back and say you need time to study it and to sit with your legal minds to explain it to you. So how you know it good? How you know it's such a wonderful thing? I mean, as a child, we used to say democracy, people outside and inside. Do I need to say that? You know? We also heard from attorney at law Cajetan Hood on the matter as he called into a talk show program one evening.
Give the NMP government credit was that we are not going to appeal the judgment. Let us find a way to pay the pension. That is a fact. Now, I had conversation with Mr. Bristol Casey last night. He has written a letter to the Attorney General saying that this bill, which they passed today, is unconstitutional. And I agree with him. We are back to square one. As Mrs. Pierce says, we are back to a Pension Disqualification Act. Because in effect, what this act is saying is this: if you come into the service after this act is passed, you have no right to a pension under the Constitution. And that is the bottom line. It is a Pension Disqualification Act because it purports to say that after this bill is passed, you're only entitled to a pension if you pay money into a fund. The Constitution says if you work in any of the established positions in the public service, you're entitled to a pension that is set out in the laws. So the only way that bill can really be effective is if that bill replaces the 1958 pension scheme. And the bill doesn't purport to do that at all. I would urge the government to read very carefully, read the last judgment. The question is whether the bill that is submitted and was passed in the lower house today is effective to replace the government pension that's guaranteed under the Constitution in Section 92. That is the issue. I repeat, what was passed today has made no reference to the 1958 pension. The court ruling is that right now, the 1958 pension still subsists. So the issue is whether or not the bill that was passed today meets the constitutional test, whether it can replace the 1958 Act. And recall, that bill makes no reference to the 1958 Act, which is the act that is in place. The bill did not try to revoke the 58 Act at all. The bill seeks to revoke Section 47 of the NIS Act. So that is the question that needs to be answered. Mr. Bristol's view, and I share his view, I repeat, is that this bill contravenes the provisions of the Constitution of Grenada as it is now. And it is going to be put to the court again, as Mrs. Pierce said. Buckle up. We'll be going back to court, I believe, because the unions are now consulting with the lawyers, and I suspect the government will have to answer a case. So it's just a first round.
Well, Cindy daughter told them, take them to court. And through all of this, with all this coming from attorney at laws and people, constitutional minds, with constitutional minds and all of that, this is what Cindy daughter had to say.
About the process. Others complain about a few sections in the legislation, not a few, particularly one section in the legislation. Nobody has advanced to this honorable house any reason to suggest or to support the call not to proceed with the bill today. Because, Madam President, the only reason why it would be justified or justifiable not to proceed with the bill today is if some fatal flaw in the bill could be pointed out. No one has pointed out any fatal flaw in the bill. Certain people express a difference of opinion as to how particular sections might have been drafted. Well, if it turns out there is merit, we have this honorable house and the law house have the general power to amend laws so as to refine and to bring them into greater conformity with policies and even other legislation, including the supreme law. But nobody, Madam President, has advanced any argument that could convince us on this side to take this bill back to our colleagues and say, guys, we need to go back to the drawing board on this. Nobody has done that. And so, Madam President, I fully and wholeheartedly support the passage of this bill today.
But Dr. Gilchrist said there's always room for improvement and that he can take it back and they can relook certain things. He did say that, right? And after all you've heard, but you see, it's ego, I guess. It's ego. I mean, they're making a mess of everything. I'm surprised they pulled back on the no amplified music and alcohol drinking for the anniversary, the 51st anniversary, which, by the way, it's dead. Well, it's coming as quiet as Christmas came. We had nothing happening, and so all you hear about so far is the Calypso. Well, it's not Calypso anymore. It's a music festival, right? Because they change it to different genres, and they're making a mess of the things that been there. They're just making a mess. And the truth is, listen, it's time the opposition called a no confidence motion against this NDC administration in the parliament. Yes, we know the ayes always have it. We know you don't have the numbers to win a no confidence motion, but let it go on record to show that we, the people, our disapproval of what is going on in our country. At least a section of us. There are those whose heads are stuck in the sun. They're not even coming up for air, but they're defending. They're defending no matter what. What is funny is they debate the issues. And when they can't, they get personal. And they start to attack individuals and how you look and what you think and call you names. But that don't bother me. For me, die nothing. Go ahead. Let's discuss the issues. Let's discuss where we are. Let's discuss the state of the infrastructure. Let's discuss the health system. January went, we heard nothing of our statutorization or privatization, whichever one. Let's discuss the housing. The 24 point how much million you give to Andy Williams to build 200 houses, and we have none to show to this point. Let's discuss the corruption. Let's discuss the nepotism. Come to me and let's discuss that. I'm not afraid. You tell me I'm telling lies. Tell me which one of what I said on my episodes that is a lie. They all come with facts to back it. So don't tell me I'm telling lies when I'm giving you the facts. Nonsense. Time to call them out. We have no confidence in that administration. They're a failed, inept administration. And I make no apologies for saying so, and I know that many of you feel the same way. Time for the opposition to organize a protest against these people. They are doing what they want and they're getting away with it. Speak up and speak out against the bullying of our workers and our people. Fix our roads. Stop telling us the rain and the flood caused the potholes. It's sunny and bright now. Fix the roads. Fix the sidewalk. I don't want to hear it's been happening since when? You said you were going to transform our infrastructure. Those were your exact words. You were going to transform our health system. Transform it. Fix it. Look at our pristine carnage. It's like the entire carnage is a ghetto. Fix it. Fix our streets, byways, highways, everywheres, full of hole, break up sidewalks, ruggedy, dingy, dirty. Fix it. And stop talking about it didn't just happen. 2.5 years is enough for us to have this deterioration in our infrastructure. And if you did nothing about it, that's the results. That's the results. And then we have to deal with the Prime Minister and all his arrogance, talking about NDC and workers is in their DNA. Which NDC? Not the one I've been a part of for 20-something years before I retire. I resigned. You just come out. When you come out talking about NDC and DNA, what you know about NDC? You're not even a NDC. You all said it. You all are nation builders. You all hijack NDC or bought NDC. Bought and paid for. NDC people say, y'all promised y'all was going to pay off the loans and y'all didn't pay it off. I don't know. I'm not inside. They say the promise was to pay off the loans because I know of 2 individuals that NDC met with and asked for $20,000 in exchange for leadership. And don't tell me a lie, I'll go call him. Or if you call him, I'll go whistle. 2 gentlemen that you all met with and asked them for $20,000 to help pay your bills. And only 1 million in, I don't know what the 20,000 was going to do. But $20,000 NDC was up for sale for. $20,000. Pay them $20,000, give them $20,000 for leadership. I don't know how much the no one, he promised all you or whatever. But don't tell me about NDC and DNA for workers. Listen to him.
So, when we talk about an administration that is pro-workers, this is not some fly-by-night something that happens. That has always been the DNA of the National Democratic Party. And you could look to all of the things that have happened in the last 2.5 years in relation to protecting and promoting the progress of the working class throughout Grenada, Carriacou, and Peter Martin. So, Mr. Speaker, this is simply a continuation of this.
In my 20-something years, I think it was about 23 or 25 years since when I resigned from the NDC. I have not seen this gentleman once in anything to do with NDC. I have not heard of this gentleman helping NDC in any way, whether legally, financially, or otherwise. Nothing. No time at all. But now you're talking about workers has always been in the DNA. What do you know about NDC? Yeah? Wasn't that the corporate lawyer, the champion for employers, like the Grenada Breweries Limited, who had the case drawn out for months until the workers whose salaries was withheld from them for not going to work, being outside on the line, had to end up going to Tau on a Friday, end of week, with plastic bags to get green fig, yams, and gospel to go home to help feed their families. Had Chester Humphrey lying down in front of trucks. Nothing doing. And NDC was in office then, The NDC that have workers in the DNA. Chester Ball, he say how Tillman send soldiers. Remember the soldiers coming up Morris Bishop Highway with their guns? NDC send soldiers to kill them, to shoot them. That said NDC, that had the DNA, workers the DNA in the blood, whatever nonsense he talking. the protest was drawn out for so long with Deacon Mitchell as the lawyer for the Grenada breweries. Drawn, and that's his MO, eh? I'm going to tell you all more. Draw it out until they get tired. Indeed, they got tired and had to go back, and because it wasn't getting paid, they had their mortgages to pay, they had their children, their families to feed. So they had to go back in and end up with less than even than they had when they started the protest. That Deacon Mitchell that have workers' DNA in his blood right now. Is that the same corporate lawyer who fought with WRB against Grenlec workers and the people of Grenada? And I'll tell you why the people of Grenada. WRB purchased Grenlec in 1994. The share purchase agreement gave them a monopoly over the production of electricity in Grenada. It meant that we couldn't do, and we're talking private citizen here, we couldn't purchase solar or wind or any other thing without getting permission from Grenlec. Grenlec was the sole provider, so there was no way for anyone to access cheaper electricity using alternative methods. NDC here, NDC that sell Grenlec to WRB. In 2016, the government of Grenada sought to come in with new legislation, the Electricity Supply Act, and introduced the Public Utility Regulatory Body to control the prices and to regulate and remove the monopoly that Grenlec had on us. The share purchase agreement, however, included a clause that triggered buyback, so that that clause, depending on what happened, the government of Grenada will have to buy back Grenlec. If there was like a strike, a war, natural disasters, changes in law, not sanctioned by WRB, the variations in the rates settings to reduce income by WRB. In other words, anything the state did that WRB did not agree with, anything that affected their profits, can or could have triggered the repurchase agreement. Things like strike and other stuff that I had mentioned. So the change in the law that allowed citizens to use solar, that is after the NMP administration changed the regulations, and that allowed citizens to be able to purchase and use solar or any form of alternative energy, the citizens not having to go through Grenlec to do so, triggered the repurchase clause. Attorney at law Deacon Mitchell fought against the people of Grenada, representing WRB in the state of Grenada, not allowing us to get cheaper electricity. They went to court, and the court agreed that the government of Grenada, changing the law which allowed citizens to get solar panels through Grenlec, basically affected Grenlec's profit margin, which broke their monopoly, and so the government had to purchase Grenlec. couldn't get away from it. It was in agreement. It was in the law. They had to. The repurchase was in 2021. And by 2022, in the 2022 budget, the government of Grenada, that is the NNP administration, was able to remove all taxes on our electricity and reduce the non-fuel charge by 25%. In June 2022, when the Deacon Mitchell-led administration took office, the Prime Minister immediately reintroduced all the taxes on electricity and reinstated the 25% reduction on the non-fuel charge, which was giving us, as a people, cheaper rates. So our electricity rates went back up. So much for loving the people and having people's workers' DNA in their blood. So let me explain to you what makes up the electricity bill. The fuel rate, the non-fuel rate, and the taxes. Those three components gives you your cost for your electricity bill. The fuel rate is controlled by the world market price in oil charges, which no government has control over. The non-fuel rate, there is control over that by whosoever owns the company, Grenlec. Then there are the taxes that belong to the state. Now, when the government purchased Grenlec in 2021, as I said before, in the 2022 budget, because the government now owned Grenlec, they were able to remove the taxes of the bills and reduce the non-fuel rate by 25%. Deacon Mitchell, coming into office, one of the very first things he did was to reinstate the 25% on the non-fuel charges and to reintroduce the taxes. The Prime Minister said the reduction in the non-fuel charge is affecting Grenlec's profit. That's what Deacon Mitchell said. The Grenada Laundry Services, the company was sold 4 years ago. The manager and accountant was told after the fact. She then expressed that she had no interest in continuing with the new owners. And so she would rather be severed and paid her severances and move on. She received a letter from the company stating her employment continues when she said she did not want to continue. She took the letter to the Ministry of Labor, where she met and dealt with the Deputy Labor Commissioner, Mr. Reginald Lord, who advised her, once notice was given that she no longer wanted to continue with the company, she was well within her rights. And after 17 and a half years of service to the company, she has to be compensated. Attorney Deacon Mitchell represented the previous owner of the company, and Ms. Charles. He advised his client that once the worker had the option to remain on the job, they don't have to pay them severance. The Deputy Labor Commissioner, Reginald Lord, told the worker that that is not so, that she was well within her rights to stay on or sever ties. After 17 and a half years of service, to date, she has not been compensated. The Attorney General, Minister of Labor, was brought into the mix and agreed, and that's Cynthia's daughter we're talking about here, agreed with the Labor Commissioner that according to the Labor Act Section 45, subsection 1 and 2, she is entitled to her severance pay and her holiday pay as well. And let me see if I can pull this up here quickly, because I only know I like to come with my facts. Right. Successor employer, 45 subsection 1, where a business or a part of it is sold, leased, transferred, or otherwise disposed of, the periods of employment with the two successive employers shall be deemed to constitute a single period of continuous employment with the successor employment. 45 subsection 2, the employees of the former employer shall have the option to be terminated and receive termination allowance or continue with the successor employer. I mean, I've never seen another piece of legislation so clear, because you know they always have all kind of thing where you need legal minds to explain it for you. Clear as day, right? The Deputy Labor Commissioner, according to the Labor Act, agreed that the lady is entitled to compensation. The Ministry of Labor organized a meeting with all parties, the victim, her former boss, and the boss's lawyer, Deacon Mitchell. And the victim was represented by the Deputy Labor Commissioner, Reginald Lord. At that meeting, Deacon told the labor representative that the Grenada Laundry Services has not changed, and that the victim, because the name ain't changed, it ain't changed, although they have new owners. But we still have Hubbard's, we still have George F. Huggins and Company Limited. Right? I don't even know who's Mr. Hubbard's, and Mr. Hubbard's might be dead how much years ago. But we still have that. The name didn't change, but owners changed. We still have CK's Super Value. Right? We still have that, right? He said that the Grenada Laundry Services has not changed. Just the name and change, right? And that the victim was not employed by the owner, Ms. Charles, but by the laundry services. And therefore, Ms. Charles don't owe her anything. Right? The Department of Labor, through the Deputy Labor Commissioner and the Minister, that is Cynthia's daughter, agreed that the young lady was due her severance. She agreed with what the Deputy Labor Commissioner had put forward, and in front of the people, Ms. Charles told them, the laundry people, that they had to pay the lady her severance. Guess what? Deacon Mitchell told the labor commissioner that he, the labor commissioner, the deputy labor commissioner, interpreted the law wrongly. And if his clients, and if his client, meaning the labor commissioner's client, want money, she should take the matter to court. As I understand it, labor-related matters don't go anywhere in the court. They send you to mitigation and back to the labor commissioner and the Ministry of Labor to sort it out. So he knew what he was talking about. I'm a lawyer. I know what I'm talking about. Right? And so it would come full circle. Attorney Deacon Mitchell, who advised to his client, was basically, don't pay. Don't pay. A meeting was held in September 2023. A letter came from the office of the attorney stating that their client is no longer interested in any sort of negotiations. The Minister of Labor called a meeting with the worker and did a 180 on her, changed her mind. She said after contemplating and sitting and studying the whole thing, she realized that the worker has no severance to get, just holiday pay. After she spoke to Deacon Mitchell, she meant, after sitting and contemplating. The law, I read it to you, is there to prove. She said that all the company owes the worker now is a holiday pay she had inside and gave the employer 7 days to pay the worker. That was last year, September 2024. She gave us 7 days. The minister, gave them 7 days. She has yet to receive a cent, a penny from the employer, the former employer. At the meeting in August 2023, where Cynthia Daughter told the employer they had to pay the worker her severance and her holiday pay, she changed her mind, saying she interpreted the law wrongly. 25 persons, 25 workers, unpaid and on leave since June 15, 2021. June 15, 2021 at the St. George's University. No dismissal letter, no letter of suspension or termination or disciplinary action as it relates to not being on the job. All they were told, they were unvaxxed and can't work, can't access the campus, and they were advised by the union not to try. It also became evident after a while that even if they took the vaccine, there was no guarantee they were or will be accepted back on the job. In fact, I spoke to one such gentleman who eventually took the vaccine with the hope of getting back his job, and he was not taken back. There is nothing in their contract with the university that states mandatory vaccination as a requirement to keep their job. What is worse, during the height of the COVID, they were all on the job and allowed on campus and worked up until the 15th of June, 2021, when they received half their month's salary. And to date, they have not received any correspondence or documentation informing them of their status with SGU, the St. George's University. These workers have served between 15 to 30 years on the job, and they are being asked to take 50% of their year's service so that they can get their pension. that they've worked for. The law firm representing the St. George's University, Mitchells and Co. Before the elections, this happened during COVID, Deacon Mitchell was the lawyer on the ground here for the St. George's University. There are 25 workers, Prime Minister, whose pension is held hostage by their former employer. Yes, the pension that you call 4,500 workers are out there without pension. These workers, these 25 workers, are being kept without their pension by their employer whom you represent. It has been 4 years and the workers are begging to be severed, to get their pension and their severance and move on. In their contract, if you don't show up for work for 7 days, then you're terminated. They have not been at work for 4 years. They were refused a conversation with their employer or anyone responsible. The university only speaks to the union, TAU. And right now, they feel let down by their union. The workers have been saying they are ready to sever their relationship and to be compensated as such. They were never severed with letters stating, they were never served with letters stating they were fired. Attorney Deacon Mitchell said, if they did not take the vaccine, it means they don't want work. While they were not allowed on campus because they were not vaccinated, construction workers were allowed on the campus, passing them through the back gate to continue their construction work on the very campus. They worked through the pandemic, maintenance, domestic, entering the students' room in some cases when the students tested positive. How humane. And after all of that, they told them they must be vaccinated to come back on the campus. They have tried getting legal representation, but no lawyer will take their case. Some persons lost their homes, unable to service their mortgages. Persons lost their marriages. They got nothing from NIS either. The university has since tweaked their contract to suit them conveniently. Deacon Mitchell represented the university. His law firm, Mitchell & Co., still represents the university. Workers in his DNA. Folks, that's a wrap on today's episode of Simon Says. Always a pleasure conversing with you, keeping them honest. Thank you for joining us for yet another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. See you next week, same time, same place, as we continue these discussions. Bye now.
Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.